Hi there, how you doing? So, without too much by way of fanfare, I am officially launching the channel Fletcher Hamilton, and I'm your eponymous host, Tena koto katoa. Greetings, New Zealand, and the YouTube community therein and abroad. Welcome, one and all. This is the maiden voyage of Fletcher Hamilton, a channel devoted to the current and cultural affairs of Aotearoa, with discussion intended to provide some degree of equipoise to Kiwi mass media and its often all too left-leaning coverage and commentary of aforesaid affairs. So, it seems like there's quite a lot going on in the world right now. Although it's hard to think of a time in human history where there wasn't so much going on. But being the naive twit that I tend to be, having lived abroad for the better part of 10 years, I always thought that us Kiwis were just too level-headed to bother with the cultural excesses of the rest of the globe. I really did not think that we would be susceptible to the madness that seems to be sweeping the rest of the world. That's not to say that us Kiwis don't get, you know, a little hot-blooded when trouble lands on or occurs close to our shores, perhaps most famously demonstrated by the 1981 South African rugby tour, aka the Springbok Tour, in which extensive protests erupted in several major cities, with ensuing injuries, as you would expect. And flashing forward, there was more recently the 1999 East Timorese crisis. I actually remember attending a protest march up Queen Street late that year, and I was there at the behest of a girl in high school I liked at the time. Actually, I had zero understanding of what the crisis actually was. I couldn't have explained the political situation, and I couldn't even have pointed to the general region on any world map, which is either a sad indictment on me or West Auckland high schools in general. Take your pick. But the point I'm making is I really didn't think New Zealand, being as close to paradise as you could reasonably expect in this world, I didn't think we'd be too eager to import the political problems dividing the rest of the world at present. But it seems I was mistaken. And before we begin, just by way of an aside, I'm hereby noting the irony of this endeavour, as I see it. I am reluctant to contribute to the rise of globalism by merely commenting on it. As in making any cultural commentary, I'm doing that which I accuse others of doing, taking sides in a culture war that shouldn't have to affect New Zealand life at all. Though I suppose it's inevitable that New Zealand, sooner or later, would be embroiled in the contest. That's the paradox of the internet. It it sort of brings the whole world into your home, and vice versa. It makes your home a barrack in the culture war itself. It's akin to, you know, fighting fire with fire. Although I hate to use cliches. I usually avoid cliches like the plague. But joking aside, if you stand in opposition to globalism, I can't help but wonder if you are inadvertently aiding and abetting globalism. But I'm not making this video to wax philosophical too much. Getting more to the point, it seems that after the Christchurch Mosque Massacre, the New Zealand police are becoming somewhat emboldened, and I've noticed in the last few months, since Christchurch, videos started appearing on YouTube depicting the New Zealand police paying house calls to certain New Zealand citizens, these citizens themselves being of a certain political leaning, most simply described as right of centre, or better yet, conservative. Without me going too in depth with any actual research, just like I didn't do in 1999 with the East Timorese crisis, because I have a 9 to 5 and I generally can't afford the time. Ostensibly, some Kiwi citizens are posting comments onto miscellaneous social media platforms, comments which I myself haven't seen, so I cannot attest as to the nature of these comments. I can speculate, and I will. I surmise that as the subject in each video is not depicted as being under arrest at the time, that therefore their comments are legal in nature, insofar as that they were not tantamount to threats or the attempted incitement to violence. I dare say that they were not in contravention of the New Zealand Human Rights Act 1993, which which prohibits any attempt to sow racial disharmony via electronic dissemination, content that is abusive, threatening, or insulting. I'm actually not too comfortable with that last stipulation, as what is insulting or intended to be insulting is highly subjective, so that might be a topic on which I do a future video. If I had to guess, I'd say that the comments are critical of the societal issues du jour, such as immigration and postmodern progressivism and globalism, and how these issues impact the cultural milieu of New Zealand society. But particularly the former one, immigration, which is always a very emotive issue by its very nature. Judging from an article from stuff.co.nz, a New Zealand news website published by Stuff Limited, which is a subsidiary of the Australian company Fairfax Media Limited. Judging from the article, conspiracy theorist claims police have visited him 5 times after Christchurch terror attack, from Sam Sherwood, dated May the 3rd, 2019. Some of these comments might allude to the belief that the Christchurch massacre itself was a so-called false flag operation orchestrated by globalists as a means to implement more white guilt and or to enact a full or partial gun ban. Again, I don't know what these individuals said or what they posted. I think that they are welcome to their opinions, though I would personally reject the idea that the Christchurch massacre was any kind of false flag operation, at least until any compelling evidence of that assertion were to be made public, and I really don't think it ever would be, because I don't think any such evidence exists. I do not think the Christchurch massacre was a false flag. Regardless, I think that people are totally free to speculate to whatever extent that they wish to. And I'm uncomfortable that apparently police are actually paying close attention to so-called conspiracy theorists spreading false narratives about the massacre. I'm not sure I buy into the idea that mere speculation, or even the expression of ostensibly wild and crazy ideas, somehow builds a dangerous false narrative that other people might be inclined to act upon in some dangerous way. I really do not buy into that idea at all. So, on the face of it, we have the New Zealand police all but badgering citizens, as apparently they've always been loath to do. I've heard it said people report constant visits from plainclothed police for their political views on the use of 1080, their opinions surrounding euthanasia or firearms. But now, in this age of ubiquitous iPhones, and the public now being armed with effective video cameras 24/7, the police seem totally disinclined to state the purpose of their visit when their friendly little social calls are revealed to be being filmed. Now, I'm no legal eagle, so naturally, after seeing these videos, I felt motivated. For once in my life, I felt motivated to conduct a little research. You see, I do research sometimes. Anyway, I was always fairly sure that the New Zealand police abided by a policy similar to that of the American police, in that filming an officer in the performance of their duty is legal, insofar as you do not become an obstacle to them in the enactment of their duty. As for the 3 videos themselves, I'll link them in the description. But just in terms of the basic brass tacks, 2 videos depict the police actually loitering on subjects' properties. The first is titled, New Zealand Police Visit a Guy on Sunday, originally uploaded by a user called Napoleon Ardern, since re-uploaded by user Rahira K. This one is probably the most shocking of the trio. Not that any of them are easy watching to begin with. But picture this. It's Sunday morning, and armed police are apparently hanging around on your lawn, like Nazi Sturmabteilung, apparently having failed to even announce themselves, let alone immediately justify their presence. So it's only when the subject of the video confronts the pair of officers, they sort of sheepishly explain their being there, but surprise, surprise, they come down with a bad case of lockjaw when they realize they're being filmed. The second video is entitled New Zealand journalist Vinny Eastwood's 5th police visit, Christchurch Mosque Massacre. And again, we see the subject, one Vinny Eastwood, confronted with state officers conducting themselves with the same autocratic insolences, and yet also with those weirdly hangdog attitudes, as if they subconsciously realize they have no legitimate purpose to actually be there. Yet again, the officers decline to detail the purpose of their visit until the camera is turned off. Third video of note, titled Since the Christchurch Mosque attack, I've had 2 visits from armed police for my political views. This video does not depict the police visit itself, but user, uploader, Cross the Rubicon describes the police visiting him in response to his videos regarding immigration and unassimilable migrants, global-minded world leaders, and the destruction of the nation-state. He contends that he and his family were interviewed and asked all manner of daft, dippy questions such as, are you a racist? Are you a Trump supporter? Do you have any friends from minority backgrounds? Just this whole barrage of really meaningless, bizarre questions of no real substance or purpose in terms of police procedure. As I said, I'll provide links to these videos below, but in every instance it seems that armed police called upon the residences of political targets, and they came equipped with guns, but refused to talk to the subject if they knew they were being recorded. Actually, it's my understanding that in the US, most law enforcement officers actually wear body cameras nowadays to record evidence of criminal activity so they can build cases and exonerate officers of undue accusations. And on the flip side, to determine if the actions of any given officer were sound and above board. So the fact that the New Zealand police would want to talk to anybody in lieu of being recorded speaks volumes, I think. Agents of the state, public officials in the performance of public duties, call upon private residences to quiz their subjects, in one case apparently just lingering on the lawn without even knocking on the door. but in every instance refuse consent to be recorded, or refuse to conduct the matter any further once they realise that they are being recorded. Now, it's a bit vague, as these things inevitably are, but as long as you are not interfering with their job or their ability to perform their job, you can film the police, as is the case in America. This was corroborated by the former Minister of Police, Judith Collins, who responded personally to some questions about the issue of recording the police as were posed to them by Thomas Beagle of Tech Liberty New Zealand in 2011. I'll attach that link below too. The gentleman presently incumbent in the role of Minister of Police is the Honourable Stuart Nash, representative of Labour, and just as Judith Collins made the time to reply personally to some inquiries made by a concerned party, I feel optimistic that Mr. Nash might be just as eager to expatiate on the matter of police harassment or possible police harassment further. Thus, I come to the purpose of this video. We're going to embark on a little exercise in civic engagement. To this end, I've drafted a letter to Mr. Nash expressing my concern, which I will be physically printing and posting, but will also scroll down the letter in this video and make the video itself a sort of open electronic letter to Mr. Nash. And if he replies, we'll review any written response he cares to provide on this channel at a later date. Without further ado, the Honourable Stuart Nash. How do you do? I hope this missive finds you well. Just a brief inquiry, if you would indulge me. Since the dreadful, and there really is no adjective that can convey the real horror of the event, so dreadful, however demeaning that sounds, must suffice, Christchurch Mosque Massacre, I understand that the New Zealand police are working indefatigably to identify and pursue other possibly radicalised individuals within the community. And so they should, as this is, of course, not only their duty, it is something that must be done to protect the population from possibly dangerous and/or violent potential offenders. However, I fear that the realization of this duty is extending into realms of premeditated harassment and deliberate intimidation, as evidenced by several, so far, videos depicting members of the New Zealand police calling upon citizens, and apparently doing so during unorthodox hours, with a view to speaking to aforesaid citizens in regard to matters of comments posted on social media, exempli gratia, harrying political opponents, viz. The issue of these videos posted onto the video sharing platform YouTube since the Christchurch Mosque Massacre, which depict the New Zealand police not only acting out of accord with their jobs, but also refusing consent to being filmed, although filming would not obstruct them in enacting their duties, seemingly employing intimidation tactics such as closing roads and calling upon persons of interest during irregular hours such as early Sunday morning, acting in such a manner contrary to their duty or purpose, and, apparently, having no legitimate reason to visit persons of interest at all, other than state disapproval of their asserted, conventionally conservative politics. It would appear that the victims of this harassment, if that is what it is, are people who identify as conservatives and presumably express such views via the diocese of social media. Therefore, I invite you to expatiate on the issues and the particular concerns I raise in this letter. Incidentally, although it has no ultimate bearing on my most pressing concerns, it must be said that the constables indicated in each of the videos are rather sloppily and unprofessionally presented, although admittedly that is neither here nor there. I thank you sincerely for your time. Fletcher Hamilton. And so, with this electronic video letter and a physical hard copy in post, I await official response with eager anticipation and bated breath. Just for future reference, I need to make it perfectly, totally, completely crystal that I am not trying to incite any kind of undue animosity or to stir up any kind of unwarranted hostility to the New Zealand police or to Mr. Stuart Nash. I'd only encourage you, if you share my concerns regarding recent police conduct, to follow this example and contact the proper authorities via the proper civic channels, if you do have concerns in relation to the matter at hand. But just by way of a friendly counsel, always remember, if you do find yourself in the sights of any police seeking a friendly chat or asking you to help them clear up a matter, always cooperate, stay calm and polite, answer initial questions, maybe even get a little bit conversational, you know. Crazy weather we're having recently, eh? Or did you see the footy the other night? Or, I don't know, who's your favourite Simpsons character? But ensure you ask the officers to provide identification. They have in all likelihood already given you their names, but make sure you have their names, their rank, their badge number, the police station they're from, and of course, jot down these things along with the time, the day, and the date with good old-fashioned pen and paper. At that point, you may wish to make it clear that you intend to record the conversation. Now, if they refuse to discuss the matter with you on camera, then I believe you can ask to disengage from the conversation if you are not under arrest or otherwise being detained. Now, I saw it in the comments. I think a comment in the comment section of the first video, New Zealand police visit a guy on Sunday, that a secret camera could be set up in the home or on the doorstep or even on one's person. Now, I'm not sure if New Zealand is a one-party rule or a single-party consent state, but I am certain, as was Judith Collins, that in dealing with state agents, you do not require consent. Actually, if anybody who might have seen something like a police media release handbook could categorically clear this up for me, I'd love to see your comment below. Even if state officers do consent to recording, never confirm or confess anything, not in lieu of legal counsel, at least. Never offer up any information, not without a lawyer, and don't invite them into your home. They need a warrant to be allowed into the premises. And though you should remain diplomatic, but unforthcoming, it might be worth appealing to their sense of humanity by asking earnest questions such as those posed by a commentator in the first video, and he identified himself as a concerned ex-official, such questions as, how would you feel if the tables were turned and I fronted up at your place with a gun in order to have a conversation? Or, do you think this is a good use of my taxes as well as your time and resources? Or, is the attempted intimidation of those with a different opinion to yours why you joined the police? As ever, I implore you, absolutely implore you, remain respectful, peaceful, calm, and courteous. Again, it is not my intention to rile up any anti-police or anti-government sentiment or any enmity to individuals within those organizations, and I accept no responsibility for the actions of individuals who misinterpret my civic-minded goodwill. I'm launching this channel because I still have faith in the systems we have. I just want some kind of reassurance that the people presently charged with the upkeep of our systems are truthful and trustworthy in doing so. In closing, feel free to like and leave a comment, or indeed dislike and comment why you did dislike the video or its contents. I praise honesty above all else. Comments will remain organic, in that they will not be moderated by me in any way, shape, or form. Nobody gets shadow banned, nor will I delete any comments. I don't have much respect for people who do try to cultivate any false impression of their influence or popularity in those ways. Uh, Similarly, the like to dislike ratio will remain enabled. Again, it's a pet peeve of mine when people deactivate that feature. I don't think it necessarily indicates any lack of conviction in their own arguments, but I think it's a little craven when people don't want to be publicly subject to any discourse their arguments might generate. After all, if you can't stand the heat, then get out of the galley. Thanks for watching Fletcher Hamilton, your channel to challenge New Zealand's left-wing excesses. Kia kaua, New Zealand.